Okay, maybe we should go down. I'm not quite sure.
Teeny tiny little click. Dark gold. Some of the wood we've been seeing. One of the shops is
A bell tower.
Bell Arch.
Eigi Koen Temple. Tenshoji Temple. This is walking. You get a nice view from here of the bell tower with the hills in the distance. Here we are at the Hida Folk Village. And these are some old traditional Japanese houses. We've just arrived here actually after a 2-hour abortive drive up to try and get to Ogimachi. We drove about an hour and 10 minutes and came to a roadblock in the middle of the road. They closed it off for repair work, so we couldn't get to our destination. We come back here instead. It's probably quite a good substitute really, because this is just like the houses in Ogimachi are supposed to be like. Very, very steeply sloped farmhouses, sloped to get the snow off the roofs, and large to house large families. Apparently in these remote mountain villages, crammed in very narrow valleys, there was insufficient land to build new houses. So they had a real population problem, which they controlled apparently by allowing only the eldest son in the family to marry. And he would be the one that would inherit the family house. None of the other sons would be allowed to marry. The younger sons, on the other hand, would be allowed to go at certain times over to other people's houses where they would have women that they would be allowed to have children with. But they weren't allowed to keep the children. The children would become part of the wives, or rather the girl's family, and would work on their farm. I don't suppose that happens anymore, but it sounds a very odd way of living. But I suppose that one made sure that there were enough people to work on the farms and that there were not too many people to own the houses. This is inside Arias's house, which is a typical house of the Hida prefecture, where apparently they had lots and lots of snow, up to 2 meters in depth. The snow would accumulate on these sloped roofs, which you can see are supported by some very heavy timbers to support the weight of the snow during the winter time, which obviously they didn't sweep off like the roof cleaners in New England sweep off the roofs there. This house was built in the 1600s, actually around the same time as our house in Cookfield was built. And like the house in Cookfield was originally built with no floor, apparently this one originally had an earthen floor as well, although they now put concrete on it. This is a stable just off the side of the house where they kept their cows alongside them. This is the Wakayama's house, which was built in the Shirakawa village in 1751, which was flooded for a reservoir, and this building was taken down before it was flooded in 1959 and moved here. Actually about the first building that was put up here. This is an amazing structure, an A-frame type house, very much like the modern A-frames you have now in, again in New England. Apparently there are two special features. One is seen in the steep slanted roof, and the other in the room arrangements which were common in farmers' houses in the Shirakawa village in the olden days. The thatch really is quite amazing. Look at the thickness of that thatched roof. Look at the work in making the decorations on the side. Another interesting feature are these rocks which are put on top of the roof, supposed to hold it down.
In the old days, a floor of the entrance was high like this, and there was a urinal in general. Ta-da!
Is that all that you had to say?
That's all that
That's the urinal, is it?
That's it. And it says, out of use.
Well, that's good.
Well, don't use it, that means.
Now going into the Wakayama's house, here is again, before you even get into the house, the stable on the outside here. Poor creatures, how the hell did they stand in that sort of dip in there? Now walking into the house itself, again, we have one of the traditional fireplaces, which will be the main meeting area, and that leads into a more formal tatami room, which I suppose must have been where they had their meals again. This is very similar to some of the other places we've seen, isn't it? With a shrine in the corner there. This is quite interesting here, the floorboards here. We're looking up at floors above us, but there are gaps in between the floorboards. I suppose these gaps were to let all the heat go up. So they heated all the rooms from this big far at the bottom, which is down here. We're now up on the second floor, which I suppose we would normally call the first floor above the ground floor. Here are the slats we're looking at from down below, and here are some incredible looking ties. Look at that. And there's knots tied. Once again, looking up high, you can see there are another 2 floors up there. Again with open slats, get the heat up, smoke into the ceiling, where it also helped the silkworms apparently. This is a ladder, which I suppose was used for getting up to the 3rd floor. We're now going to make our way down to Tanaka's house, which apparently is typical of houses built in the 1700s, farmhouses built in the Takayama Basin. And we're going to go inside and see the way that farmers used to live their lives in the Takayama region. Now coming inside to what's his name? Tanaka's house. Again, you see a stable in there, and an earthen floor, and very basic surroundings. I suppose in here we must have the fireplace. Yep, there's the fireplace. Oh, out of focus. We'll get some focus here. Here's the fireplace. Just a few bricks around a pile of ash, and some rush matting on the floor. No tatamis in here. This would be a bedroom in these 2 futon boxes. This room is very, very dark. In fact, it is illuminated by about a 40-watt light bulb. It's the middle of the day, but it's pitch dark with no windows. When the farmers lived here, it would have been totally dark, because they would have no light at all. I don't think I'd fancy being a farmer in Takayama in this time, do you?
They're extremely dark and distinct all year round. Really dim.
Pretty cold in winter time as well.
Very cold.
Having seen how tough the life of a farmer was, I think it's time to get some religion. So it's round the corner to Nishioka's house, Nishioka was a Buddhist priest, and this was the house he lived in, beside his temple. Not bad compared to the farmer's house. But before we get to Nishioka's house, we actually have the Hasagoya, which was a shed that was used for drying grains in the area. You'll see these machines here, which I suppose are fairly modern in comparison to what must have been around in Mr. Tanaka's time. With some big storage yards. If you look in the upper part of the shed here, you can see the upper part is probably used for storing the grains in the winter time. This is looking up at the roof of Nishioka's house. Look at all the moss growing on his thatch. It's a positive garden. As we enter Nishioka's house, we see that even in a priest's house, there's a stable with a cow. This one's not real. These are the silkworm. And you see them moving. What we were looking at down there was the sorting out of the silkworms, which live up here in the top part of the house and above us in the next 2 stories. This house obviously is not in such good condition as the previous one. I suppose the priest didn't have so much money to spend on ensuring he had the latest ties, etc. One last look at the silkworms. Yuck. We're now coming up to Maeda's house, who apparently was a very wealthy man who owned vast forests. This is a very posh house. And this is Mr. Taguchi's house. And Mr. Taguchi was head of his village. He designed this house so that all the rooms could be made into one big room for the meetings to be held. This is standing at the far side, and you can see that we can see all the way through to the other side of the building. This room is the living room. And closer in here, this room here was the workroom. I suppose up there at the end, the bedroom. This is inside the bell tower, and now we're going to ask Iona to ring it for us. Okay. Hold on. Wow, look at this.
Oh, sorry.
Wow, look at the shape of that roof. It's quite interesting from up here. This is looking down at Michikami's house, which is actually brought up here from the Toyama prefecture, which is where we were a couple of days ago. There's a positive garden growing on top of this house.
So that is
Sorry?
Turn it off.
Why?
We've not done enough videoing for the day.
It's now Friday morning, it's market time again. This is a different market, but still in Takayama. This is Takayama Jinja, which was a local government building for administration, finance, police, taxes, etc. In 1603, the Tokugawa family established a new government in Tokyo, which continued until the Meiji Restoration in 1868. In 1692, this province, the Hida province, came under the direct control of the Tokugawa government. From that time until the Restoration in 1868, there were 25 head officials who were dispatched here from Edo or Tokyo, and they administered the affairs of the state for 177 years, in this building basically. At the time of the Tokugawa government, there were 60 local government offices called jinjas, just like this building, that controlled the outlying regions. But this building is the only building that still exists today. So it's considered to be a very valuable and a very prized national asset. The first room we come into is the reception room, where the leading officials will be waiting to see the government officials. And in the reception hall is this rice cake decoration. This is the room where the head official, who was called the Daikan, and his chief vassals, called the Tetsuki and Tidai, perform their administrative activities. You'd have had men sitting in their kimonos on these tatami mats in this big room. Besides that room is a slightly smaller room where the lesser vassals will perform their administrative duties. Again, all sitting on the tatami mat floors here. This is a sand garden in the middle of the Goyuba room, the room for the lesser vassals. Just on the side of the Onyakusho, the room for the big boppers, is this room, or this trench, which apparently was where people were recognised for doing good deeds, or where their petitions were heard. They wouldn't be allowed to come up on the main floor here. They would sit or stand or kneel around on the edge. I think this gives you a slightly better view actually of where the locals would be recognised and their petitions heard. And in the background there you can see the officials' rooms. This rather plain looking room is the secretary's office. But the view out the window is quite nice. This is a reception room. Going into the head official restroom here. This place is huge. This is a long corridor down here with all sorts of living quarters off on the side. It's the head official's room. There's a guest waiting room. Looking out to a rather nice garden in the back, in the distance there. Then as we come through, what's this? It must have been some sort of pond or something for the rainwater to collect. More rooms. A resting room for the maids. Another maid's room. Oh, here we are in the kitchen. I suppose that's where they cooked the rice. And there's a cupboard with boxes. An old sink. Wooden, not even stone or porcelain. Some new wood for the side of the building. And the teapot over the open fireplace again. Seen quite a lot of these. Isn't this a lovely sort of storeroom area here? Looking up at the ceiling of the kitchen in the storeroom, you see the same type of very solid construction as we saw in some of the other houses. This is the inner courtyard, which has got a lovely, serene, very peaceful garden.
I'm sorry, no entrance.
This room here was used for public ceremonies and conferences. You can make this into either one big room, as it is now, or into 3 smaller rooms. And this was a reception room for the messengers of the shogun. And this is a carriage that the shogun or top officials would be carried in. Look how small it is. The room we're coming to now is the interrogation room, where prisoners or criminals will be brought for interrogation. See that wooden structure down there? Prisoners will be made to kneel on that whilst they're being interrogated for long periods of time. That's another instrument of torture. Don't quite know what they did with that. Oh. That's a bamboo basket that criminals will be carried in. And that's a bamboo cane, which is another tool of torture. Oh, here's a picture of what those stones would be used for. Oh, goodness gracious me. Tied onto a stake and then the stones put on his knees. Hung up by his arms tied behind his back. I don't think I'd want to do anything wrong in Japan under the Tokugawa. These are doors into warehouses where they kept all the tax that they collected from the villagers. In these times, instead of taking cash as tax as they do today, they used to take rice and other food that the villagers produced as tax. And this is where they would store it, in here. This would be the storerooms for the rice and other foodstuffs that were taken in.
You might wobble the camera a moment.
Here we are in Kamakochi having a Japanese style picnic. Dad's having his obento here. Let's have a look. Which looks like some sushi and stuff like that, and his Kirin beer. And Mum's having something slightly different. What are you having, Mum?
I'm settling down to a loaf of bread, if you want to know.
Oh, right.
And some nibbles.
Well, we've arrived here after a little bit of a diversion. We weren't allowed to drive the car up here and thought we'd have to drive for about an hour to get a bus up here again. We met this friendly taxi man who brought us up. So here we are. It's now started pissing with rain. And so just as it started to rain, we decided to embark on a walk up the river here at Kamakochi. And here we're looking on at Kapamachi, which apparently is a very... Sorry, Kapabashi. There we go, and you can see on the bridge here all the people walking across with their raincoats and umbrellas. Just to give you an idea of what the weather's like now. This is the view up the valley from Kapabashi. As you can see, the cloud is very low. Looks a bit like Scotland, doesn't it? And here is Iona, looking very trendy and fashionable in her special umbrella here. See-through.
Stupid umbrella. I've never been for a walk with an umbrella. It's very funny.
Walking up the riverbed, there are lots of little streams coming into the main river. In Japan, everything is in order. Here, as we're walking through the woods, there is a dual carriageway system for walking. When we're going this way, we walk on the left-hand side, and people coming back the other way walk on the right-hand side. Iona just got told off by someone for doing the wrong thing. The water's really clear.
some fish down there.
This is the end of the little walk we did. This is Myojin Bridge, and up in the top there, strolling across it. I love these clouds whispering in the hills. Where is it?
Look, there's one more down to do.
Where? Can't see it, so there's one coming around behind you there.
You seem very
This-
warm.
Grooming time.
Oh, amazing.
Now cleared up a little bit, enabling us to see the top of these mountains here. I don't know if it comes out on this video, but these hills are very, very steep. And they've got some very narrow gorges. There. Getting up to the top. Which is just in the clouds. We were walking along and then suddenly we heard this great scream from Iona.
No, it wasn't. It was
And this is why she screamed.
I didn't want to stand on the poor frog and hurt him.
This is a amazing little stream cutting a channel here into the side of the sand. This is looking up Kamakochi Valley. Clouds are lifted now, so you can get a slightly better view at the top. It's now Saturday morning. We're still in Matsumoto. We've just driven out into the suburbs and managed to navigate and find our way down some side streets to this museum here, which is the Japanese Folkcraft Museum, which has apparently some Japanese folkcraft in it. And inside there's a rather sweet garden. What's Iona doing down there? What are you doing?
Digging for treasure.
You praying to Buddha? And there's Buddha.
That other thing.
This is a lovely spot actually in the distance. You can see the mountain ranges quite clearly now for the first time. I love the location of this Folkcraft Museum. Look at that window. Are those vines growing down below? And the little houses in the mid-distance and the mountains in the background. That's rather nice, I like that. That's a funny shape. Pardon? Do you like this vase here, Ayla? This is actually very Shirley-like. This is very Shirley-like, this one, yeah.
That is not a Japanese. That is not a Japanese shape at all.
It's easily.
Or Hamada actually.
That's why.
We look at that photograph and the one over in
It's as if we're in the Druid pottery with all these pots. These are lunch boxes here, with mother and pearl inlay or something.
no, it's in fives.
4 is bad luck.
This is the sort of pot that Alice could make, yeah, huge one. Gosh, a lot of big pots here.
I don't know.
I don't think this is all Matsumoto pottery. I think this is. No, I think this is collected from that tall one. Well, no, this funny thing here. So it's so sort of complimentary about what Shirley does. Do you like this?
Major exhibits are wooden crafts. Major exhibits are wooden crafts.
Very particular, that particular place. It was actually in the town called Pottery. I went to the farm once. Just take it in town.
Giant sake bottle.
Yeah, it was built in.
I thought I'd take them so that you could study them. Well, you need to have it.
Too shiny.
It's all right.
Yeah, I like your design.
Would be a very useful thing to have too.
Well, there's one like this at Craig Hat, isn't there? Or the what? Note the texture on it.
On this, yeah.
No, needs to be no timber.
This is a very tranquil area of Matsumoto. It's only about 10 minutes drive from the centre.
No, plain no.
Probably more practical. Well, that was absolutely wonderful. Great fun. Super place. We're about to go into the Japan Judicature building, but from this car park, which itself is not very pretty, you can get a very good impression as I swing around here of how we are in the middle of this big flat valley, surrounded basically on all sides by mountains. It must look quite spectacular when the mountains have snow on the top. This is not quite so pretty. That modern building there is a woodblock Museum. And then we are back 360 degrees. And this is the outside of the Judicature building. Very traditional looking Japanese construction. This is inside a museum of police weapons. I initially thought that these were agricultural tools, but in fact they're tools used in controlling a crowd, as is shown in this picture here. In this cabinet we have various truncheons and handcuffs. This is looking down the main corridor where the court officials must have had their offices. At the end here, in through this door, we have the courtroom. This is where the magistrates would have sat at the top. And where Mum is probably where the plaintiffs stood. And this is looking again from the other side into the courtroom. Here the judge sitting in the middle. And space on either side for the two court clerks. And I guess this is where the trial lawyers sat to plead their cases. I pronounce you guilty of high treason. You shall suffer head loss at dawn tomorrow morning. Here we are in another courtroom. And there is the man on trial. What crime have you committed?
Please, I sold the sheep.
You shall suffer 20 years in prison.
Oh, thank you very much. It's most kind of you.
This very plain looking building over here is a prison. And inside I think we're going to find some cells. Oh, yes. What's it like inside? Oh, you've got tatami. It's a tatami room. Basin, a loo, and some tatami to sleep on. And a window. Lots of these little cells looking up in the distance. This must have been where the prisoners were brought to do work during the daytime. This is a silk loom. Well, the moral to that little visit is don't do anything wrong in Japan, otherwise you can end up in big doo-doo. This is Akihabara, which is this area where they sell videos and all sorts of hi-fi equipment. You can get basically anything you want here in the way of electronic equipment in these buildings which go up several stories. You have to talk to it as well because it records. This is in Uchida-san's garden, in Uchida's garden.
I was admiring that rock. Some of these are really quite old, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
In the back here, we're in Uchida-san's sister and brother-in-law's house, where they have some bonsai trees.
Sorry,
I've got wire on.
How many years old is this?
60?
60 years old.
and then when they go away, you have to watch it. Or
What do you think of this one here with the bending over, bent right over?
He gets up at 4 o'clock every morning to water these.
This
Oh,
is down
little ones.
in the another part of the garden. Look at this tiny little tree here.
How old
This
is
must
how
be
old is Sarah?
starting this, I don't know. This must be the beginning of one. No, it's got a wire on it.
There's so little about these things. You should get cutting off. Really.
Which one here? This little pomegranate tree here.
Yeah.
You see, that's the size of it. That's the hand. It's tiny. There's a little maple starting. That's a rather splendid example of something. Yes, Mum, you're saying just before I close it up?
Sumac.
What are these, Mum?
They're sumac trees, especially for Ian. A picture of those? What a fantastic brother you've got.
All right. No, I'm taking pictures too.
That's mountains.
And it should say REC, R-E-C in the top
Yeah,
right-hand
it's
corner.
yeah, it is okay.
That means it's recording.
How many?
Okay.
How many content is there?
Has he ever come?
ちょっとね、it's rather dark, you know, but it's
Is it
okay.
dark? I think that's because the sunlight is on the screen. It's normally
Okay.
not as bad as that.
Let's see.
It's just because the sunlight is on the screen.
We go there, further down. Yeah, that's much better.
If you want, if you want to, you
James might show you.
can use the you can use this instead, and that way it's not so dark.
I see. I see.
Okay.
When did you come home?
How to change this?
You push this in,
Ah, I see.
but when the light is very bright, this is not
And
so.
what's this blue? Ah,
This
it's
is
sound,
this
noise.
is telephoto, so you go make it wider or closer. But when you play back, it's the noise.
I see.
But I think
Oh, still recording now.
still recording. Oh right, okay.
Okay, stop.